welcome everyone to Survivor's Residuum, where her story is in the making. Hi, Jill. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a bit nervous. This is a little bit of a new platform, but thank you for agreeing to sit down with me. Can you introduce yourself to the audience? I'm going to ask for your name, your occupation, and a little brief history about where you come from or your family history. And then, lastly, if you can tell the audience how you would like to classify yourself as a survivor, surviving, or neither. You have the floor.
So, I'm Jillian Wilson. I am a marketing lead at a civil engineering firm in Indianapolis, Indiana. Family is from Chicago. So, I say I was born in Chicago, raised in South Bend, Indiana, and now I live in Indianapolis. As far as what I would classify myself as, I guess I never really thought about that, to be honest. It's hard for me to see myself as a survivor, but I guess I would choose that word over if I had to choose, if I
Okay,
had to
so if
choose
you had to
something.
choose survivor or surviving, you would choose survivor.
Yes. Because survivor sounds more like, that's done and in the past I survived it. Surviving to me sounds like I'm still, going through it.
That's very significant when you talk about it sounds like you're still going through it. So I feel like you saying you're a survivor is like prophetic because you're like, I'm done with that. But this episode and this actually whole series is about technically there's still some things that we're going through when people think that we're done, right?
Right.
So, I'd like to thank everybody who is joining us on this platform. It's a totally different platform than the questions that keep me up all night. This is something that I've been wanting to do for quite a while. I just didn't know how I wanted to do it. And what I've been doing lately is like, just do it, just rip the band aid off. So, I'm about to do that with this series, and I appreciate you for being our first guest on Survivor's Residuum. So, the technical definition for residuum is a substance or thing that remains or is left behind, in particular, a chemical residue. I like the geology definition because it gets to the heart of this interview series. The geology definition of residuum is a term used to describe the material derived from the in place weathering of bedrock. So, weathering by water or by wind or sleet, whatever causes that thing to weather. Depending on the type of parent rock, residuum can vary in texture from a coarse, gravelly material to clay. According to vocabulary.com, it is something left after other parts have been taken away. Synonyms are balance, remainder, residual, residue, or rest. All of that right there is a lot, right?
Right.
But wherever you're listening right now, you can go ahead and pause the recording, re listen to the definitions of residuum, and then continue to listen to the interview through that lens. When I created this mini series, I created it with two people in mind, Jill and my mom. My mom has always been such a picture of strength, but I know there are many, many stories behind that picture. And you, Jay, will focus on a specific part of your life in this interview, but everybody out there in YouTube land, this is only the tip of the iceberg. But you're still here, right?
Oh, still here.
You're still here, survivor, right? So, as we know, you and I know, there have been many things, tragedies, and things that you've dealt with leading up to this. And so, this is just another thing that, like I said, it made me think about you like, how are you doing? How are you feeling right now? So, I'm going to begin the interview by listing 5 of the 20 questions I gathered from online databases, a few friends, and my kid, of course. You have each of these questions. Well, we have them on a note card here. And as we walk through your story, I'm going to periodically stop and ask you to press the wheel and randomly pick a number. And that number is going to correspond with a card. And I'm going to ask you that question. Now, I do want to give an example of some of these questions. I'm going to just go ahead and give YouTube land a preview of 5 of the questions that were submitted. Paulina B says, "We all know that Black people have a long history of being abused and neglected in the healthcare system. How was your experience finding care after your diagnosis?" Arlena W asks, "If you could give your sickness to someone else, who would it be and why?" Interesting. Navi D asks, "How did it feel to beat cancer?" Stanford Medicine asks, "What has been the most significant change you see in yourself now that you have lived with cancer?" And then my question is, how does the terminology society uses to refer to you make you feel? Is it bothersome, triggering, or of no consequence? And by that, I mean you had cancer, or you're a cancer survivor, or so the terminology, how does it make you feel? Is it bothersome, triggering, or of no consequence? If you want to answer the question, good. If you decide to pass, that's okay. I want to like kind of make this fun and funky a little bit. So if you decide to pass, instead of saying pass, we're going to say sips tea. Okay?
Sips tea. Got it.
Sips tea. All right. So, like, I'm gonna pass. All right. So, let's get started. So, Jay, take me to the beginning. You and I both know the familial tragedies you faced in the years leading up to your cancer diagnosis. One thing, then another, then another. And then, was there a break for you? Did you think, like, now I can rebuild my sanity? I can get my life back to normal? Or was the initial diagnosis like right on the heels of everything else?
So I think I was pre-diagnosis. I was at a point where I felt like things were okay. But also at the same time, we were going through COVID as a world. And so that was a little bit of fear. It wasn't like COVID never like personally touched me in such a bad way in the beginning, but like right as we were kind of coming through and figuring it out, that's when my diagnosis hit. So yeah, I was definitely at a point where I was more at peace. I had just gotten baptized in March of 2020. So I was working on my relationship with God. So I'm like, only good things are coming, you know? And then, fortunately that wasn't the way things went, and that diagnosis was in March of 2021. So it was pretty early in the year after 2020.
So you said, you thought, hey, only good things from here. And then boom. Oops,
Boom.
never mind. So take me to the day when you knew something was wrong. What did you do? Who did you call? Did you seek medical care immediately? Just give a little background for everybody. Part of the reason that you agreed to sit down with me is so that your story could possibly help others. So I want to take us on this journey. We're ready to go on this journey with you. What did you do? How did you find this out?
So initially, it would be when I would take like a deeper inhale, I would feel something. And I don't really know how to describe it. It wasn't painful, it was just a discomfort. I would feel it like in my side. And for like the first couple days, I ignored it. I thought maybe this is gas. I don't know. And then it was continuing. So I was like, maybe I should go see a doctor. So I called my doctor, made an appointment. This was on a Friday when I went to see her, and she did some blood work. Again, this was a Friday, so results wasn't going to come back until probably early the next week. But she did schedule me to get an ultrasound that following week on a Tuesday. The same Friday, she thought it was my gallbladder. She mentioned that. That same Friday, I went to visit my friend in South Bend, and she was having a sleepover with her daughter for her daughter's birthday. And so I was helping out, and she has a two-story home. I lived at the time in a a first floor apartment. So I stepped upstairs at her house, and when I walked upstairs, it was like I had just ran a mile. Like, I had a very hard time catching my breath. Like, she told me later that she was extremely worried, like she felt like she should go and check on me in the middle of the night because of the way I sounded just from walking up the stairs. The following week, when I went to the doctor, to get the ultrasound. She was looking at my gallbladder. She was like, I don't see anything wrong here. But she noticed that I was breathing a way that she thought was odd. So she checked my lungs. And when she checked my lungs, she saw fluid, which is what was causing that discomfort when I would take a deep breath. There was fluid in my lungs. She said it wasn't that much. So my doctor got those results. She called me, sent me to get an X-ray same day. So I go get an X-ray. It's like the end of the day. They were about to shut down, but they were like, "We'll let you in." They started turning the equipment back on and they did the x-ray. They saw that there was a lot of fluid in my lung and they told me not to leave. They thought I had COVID and they were treating me like I had the plague. Like didn't want me to touch their phone. They were like backing up and everything. I was like, oh my
After
gosh.
they turned their equipment back on for you.
Yes. 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 So they called my doctor, told her to call me on my cell phone because they didn't want me to touch their phone. So my doctor calls me and tells me to go to the ER. Oh, this is on a Tuesday. And so I drive to the ER and, it's a whole long waiting process. You know how that goes being in the emergency room. They
Mhm,
finally take me back. They do a CT scan and I didn't know what to think at that point. I didn't know what fluid in my lung could possibly mean.
mhm,
I guess in the moment, from what I remember, I was maybe a little anxious, but like I didn't have the anxiety issues that I have now then. So
mhm.
I I really wasn't like worst case scenarioing that in my head in the
Right.
moment. Definitely
Mhm,
was today, but
mhm,
at that time I was just kind of waiting. My friend Stacy had came up there for a little bit, and as long as she could, then she left. And then the ER doctor came into the room, and she just had this sad look on her face, and I'm like, oh my god, what is happening? And then
mm.
the first thing she said to me is there somebody that you want to call?
What?
And yeah. So at that point, like my heart was beating out of my chest. Like and so she tells me that they see that I have from the CT scan, they see that I have two masses in my chest.
Mm,
And they would of course have to do a biopsy to figure out what it was. And they did keep me in the hospital for a couple of days to drain that fluid out. They did not do a biopsy at that time. They pretty much released me after they drained the fluid.
mm.
So that went from like 0 to 100 real quick.
Right, right. So, fast forward, they respond, you get the diagnoses. Give me 2 words that describe what you were feeling at that moment.
Definitely scared, and also anxious. I don't see those as the same thing. Like
Mhm,
I was afraid, but when I say anxious, like it was affecting me physically. Like I was having, I started having panic attacks, and I didn't know what they were because it's nothing I had ever experienced before.
mhm.
And so being afraid doesn't cause panic attacks like anxiety does. It's been plenty of
So
times I was afraid in the
right.
past, but yeah.
So the 2 words you would say scared and anxious, and that's very important. You said like, being scared, that's a natural kind of response, but this anxiety that you started to have. So the panic attack started then when you got the diagnoses.
The panic attack started while I was waiting to know what was going on. So it started
Mm,
like right after I was sent home. And And so, because I had a panic attack and I went back to the hospital because I didn't know what it was. I
mm,
thought something was happening to me from the masses being there. Then they kept me in the hospital when I went back and they put a rush on doing the biopsy. So I was telling them, like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. Like, they hadn't even scheduled the biopsy at that point. So then they kept me there so they could just do it. And they drained the fluid again because it kept kind of building back up again pretty quickly.
mm. How did that feeling frame your treatment and your healing process? So the feeling of anxiety and being afraid, or did it frame your healing and treatment process? Walk us through your announcement to your friends and your family and your loved ones. And did that feeling kind of change who you would tell, how you would tell them? Walk us through that.
So there's only a couple people that I actually remember telling and I don't even remember telling people the official diagnosis. I just remember telling people um, after the first night in the ER when I knew what was there. Well, I didn't know what it was, but I knew something was there. And when it came to telling people things, I do remember this. when I would go to different appointments, like whoever I talked to first, that's who got the most information. And the very last person got, yeah, it went fine. Or, just sum it up in a couple of words. But the very first person I would talk to, they would get all the details. It just got a little draining after a while, like having to repeat myself. Like I wish I could have just put everybody in a group chat and just like, this is what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that even when, certain situations like, what's going on right now. And I'm just like, okay, the update. Like, okay, if you're the first person, you're gonna get everything. After that, I'm
Hmm.
like, it's a lot. I'm gonna talk to you later.
Right.
Like I just can't deal with it right now.
Yes. It's like
So, and I
reliving it over and over and over and over again.
exactly, and that triggers sometimes that anxiety again. So I know I had that was a convoluted question, but I did want to go back to how did that feeling, the feeling of afraid and anxiety, frame your healing and your treatment process? Or do you think it did?
I think so. The weird thing about my anxiety with all this
Mhm.
is that once I knew, like once I got the results of the biopsy and I sat down with the oncologist too, actually, and they told me the plan, everything that was going to happen, that kind of calmed my anxiety because I knew what was going on. So my anxiety was kind of based on me not knowing. So I was afraid of what was going to happen. I was thinking about the worst case scenarios. I didn't know what it was gonna do to me physically. Like even if things did go okay, like how I gonna feel afterwards? Like could I recover from this? Like you hear a lot of stories of things that happen with other people, and you start putting yourself in other people's shoes. So my anxiety was just based on not being able to know what was gonna happen. So once I did, it wasn't that bad, and then it didn't become bad again until after everything was done, which is
Because
probably
now
sounds kind of weird.
yeah. But I think it's like the unknowing, the not knowing, because you didn't know
Right,
before. So like when you're in doctor's care, okay, this is the treatment on this day. This is what's gonna happen there, but now it's like, okay, like you just recently had a checkup and it was like the not knowing, like what are they gonna
right,
say? What are they gonna
right.
say? What's gonna happen again? All right, we have come to our intermission of sorts. We are going to choose a question. Go ahead and spin that wheel, Jill, and we are going to choose a question from our online databases, our friends and family. What number did we land on? Number six. Number six. Let's see. Number six. All right. And the question is this is from an online database. The person is unknown. What strategies did you find helpful for managing stress and fear?
Definitely prayer, and I just had to really focus in on my relationship with God and my faith in God, and just trying to call on His peace that according to His word, it transcends all. Like, no matter what situation you're going through, God's
Mhm.
peace is still God's peace.
Mm,
So I had to really look at that, and I had to intentionally look for the positive things throughout everything. One of my coworkers told me that no matter, like, if you're dealing with something difficult, going through a hard time, like, God doesn't waste anything. So just always pray and ask God what He wants you to learn from this.
mm.
So, despite the fact that, all this trauma is happening, something good can come out of it, but it's kind of all about your perspective of it.
That's good. That's very good. So, you've been diagnosed, treatment begins. Take us there. What did that season of your life feel like? Did you feel like giving up before you even started? I remember your very first chemo treatment. I was full of questions. I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable or put my anxiety on you. So, the treatment, guide us to that point in your mind.
So I was didn't know what to expect. I heard of chemo. I didn't really know what the process was like. I just remember sitting in that room with all those people that were going through things, and in a way, not that like I'm glad other people was going through something difficult, but it did help me to not focus as much on myself, I guess. 'Cause I don't know what other people are going through. I didn't know like how it's gonna make me feel, how it's gonna affect me physically. So after that first one, I made the mistake of not eating. I don't know if you remember this. I didn't eat anything before we went in there, and that made me so nauseous.
Mm,
And in 2021, they have all these drugs to help you with nausea. So a lot of people don't even experience that anymore like they used to, but I didn't eat. And I remember you went to that vegan restaurant and like
yeah,
just everything just made me feel even sicker
yeah.
until like the next day.
I felt so bad. I'm like, "Oh, I got all this food." I thought that, like, maybe I was taunting you with it, like, I don't know, I was just sometimes you trip over yourself trying to make things better, and you can't make a cancer diagnosis better. I didn't know what to do. But yeah, that was rough. So your treatment plan included major surgery. Was that a part of the initial plan, or as they found out more, they decided we need to operate?
First, let me say, in this year, 2021, we're still there, I was diagnosed with thymoma, which is something that even some medical professionals never heard of. And like I would go like see a doctor for something else and tell them that, and they're like, "What?" Or if I go and get my blood drawn and tell them about it, they're like, "I don't. What is that?" So it's the thymus gland.
Mhm.
That's what I was diagnosed with. And the treatment for that is to get chemo to shrink the masses and then surgery to remove them once they're at a small enough size. So that was always the plan. I had two oncologists that I was working with. One was who was kind of overseeing the chemo treatment, and the other guy, he's actually a like worldwide thymoma specialist. And so they wanted me to see him, of course, too, because he's the guy with all the expertise.
He's the man with the
He's the
plan.
man, and he was very kind. Like he gave me his cell phone number and everything too. Like if you ever need anything, just call me.
Wow. So fast forward, surgery is successful, chemo is successful. We're done, right? Cancer is in remission. Did you believe that? Take us through what happened next.
I believe that for 1 week, I got 1 week of peace. 1 week. And then that same thymoma specialist, Dr. Lawver, calls me and he's like, you know what? I don't think that was thymoma that you had. And I just immediately started crying
No.
because this was after a major surgery. So 1 week later, of course, I'm still recovering.
Right. And let's just dive into that real quick if you're okay. This surgery involved them cutting your sternum.
Yes.
This affected your walking. This
Hmm.
affected a lot.
Yes, I had to have a physical therapist come and basically help me walk again with the walker. I had to get breathing treatments 3 times a day every day, and I was not able to get up on my own. Like the first day, I think I had day or 2, I don't remember. I was on a liquid diet. I was in the ICU for a couple days too. Very major surgery.
So you said you believed it for 1 week.
1 week.
And then he says, well, actually, we were just experimenting to see. No, I'm just playing. But actually, you don't have that. So what happens next?
So he tells me that he thinks that it might be lymphoma instead. Now that's a more common word that people know when it comes to cancer. So I'm like, what does this mean? Like, and my very first question was, does that mean I have to go through chemo again?
Mm,
And he was like, yeah, if that's what it is. And yeah, I just cried and cried, and it was a very hard time because now I've developed these anxiety problems from this whole process, and I'm recovering from the surgery. I was at my sister's house, and like I needed help like just to stand up
mhm,
off from sitting like on the couch. I couldn't lay flat,
mhm.
and I could only lay on my back, but I couldn't lay flat to sleep. It was a lot, and then now we add that on top of it, and I just didn't feel like I really got any peace, and I was just really struggling mentally at that point because he was basically telling me that we had to start over, and he said that I would have to get a PET scan because if it's lymphoma, it would come back in 3 months.
Mm,
And so when I went and got the first PET scan, it was okay, and then I had to do it again, like a couple months later. I think it was like September of 2021. Then in I think in it was either at the end of January or the beginning of February 2022 when I got the next one.
mhm.
And then when I got that second PET scan, I guess when they do that, they give you the sugar water and they do the thing, they put you in the machine, and if it's like glowing in certain places with the sugar, the water, that means something ain't right.
So
And
that means
so
it was probably one of the first ones you told about this because I remember this. You gave me all the details.
probably because you probably called me like, "What's up? What's going on?
What's
What's
going
happening?"
on?
So this is a funny detail that I remember when I was in that machine. There was a stink bug on the ceiling.
What?
Okay, so the PET scan machine, it was not actually in the hospital. It was like in this trailer that like I guess moves around to the different hospitals. So I just remember staring at the stink bug on the ceiling the whole time and just hoping he don't follow me. And it felt like I was in there forever. So that's random. But yes. So I did that PET scan and yeah, it was that same doctor, Dr. Weber called me and he was like, yeah, it was glowing all over.
Mm.
And so then he sent me to see a lymphoma specialist from there.
So, who are the people that spoke life into you during this dark time? And I know it was dark because I spoke to you. I know that this was a time where you just like, what's going on? Like, you have this overarching, you know that there's peace somewhere there, but there were times where you couldn't see it. So, who were the people that spoke life into you during this dark time? And I mean, not during recovery, but in the trenches during the treatment and your re-diagnosis. You had people around you, but did you feel like it was helpful? Could you see through the darkness at that time?
So yeah, that was definitely one of the things that I would say that when I said I had to intentionally look for the good things, the people that supported me was one of those. Like I never went to one chemo treatment by myself and
Mm,
and that was 2 years of having to go through chemo. I didn't go to one appointment by myself.
wow.
And people from my church, like every now and then in mail, I would just get a card, just, someone that I'd probably never even met before telling me they're praying for me and people sending me meals and cooking for me as you did. So my friends and my church, I would say, were the people that really supported me on my job too. Like a couple of
Mhm.
people from work were really supportive too and just sending me care packages. And so I think that the people made the biggest difference in helping me to see or feel, supported. Oh, I can't forget Jacqueline. My friend Jacqueline, she was going through chemo for a different reason around the same time as me. She started first. And so she had the chemo 101s ready for me. And she's like, "Do this, don't do this." Like that was very helpful. And my friend Shamisha actually connected us because she happened to have two friends that was going through chemo. So the people were what kept me going. And honestly, like that's what I remember the most. Like you cut your hair with me. Like who would do that?
Me,
Who would do
crazy me.
that?
But you said this was like right after COVID. And I feel like the world literally lost like 2 years after COVID. Like
hmm
we didn't really know. There's so much stuff going on. And so
Right.
I actually kind of sometimes forget. And then I'm like, because I know I've cut my hair a couple of different times, but this one felt like to me, like of all things, like we spoke about before, there were other things that kept hitting you. I'm like, why? Sometimes you don't get it. Good things, I mean, bad things happen to
But
good people. And it was like, so what do I do? Well, I can't take chemo for you. I can't, no, I, okay, your hair's coming out. And I didn't even think about that part of it actually. You hear it, you see people, but it was like not Jill. I didn't think you would have cancer. So not you would lose your hair. And so it was like, well, there's nothing else. I can't take that from you, but my hair is going to grow back, right? So I can do this in solidarity with you. And I remember we were at the shop and you was like, you don't have to do this.
Yeah, so
Just coming out here was enough. I'm like, girl, yes, I'm going to do this. She was like, are you sure? But people having a strong support system is amazing.
it's everything.
We're gonna go ahead and spin that wheel again. It's time for another random
I got a few. My eyes is a little wet right now, just a little bit.
question. Let's see. The wheel is spinning. 5. Okay, we did 6 last time. All right. Not too random. Just want you to see in the screen that I'm actually picking 5. 5. This again is unknown. This is by the online database. What message would you like to share with other cancer patients or survivors?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think what I would want to share with people is, well, okay, I feel like it's two different things. So, people that are going through it right now, I would want to just share with them that, like, it's a season. It's a season that you're in right now. And I would tell them, like my coworker told me, just pray and ask God what He wants you to learn from this situation. The things that I was told when I was in the trenches myself. When it comes to someone that has survived it, that's a good question. And I'm trying to think about like what I would want someone to have said to me. And when I think about it that way, the first thing that came to mind is to kind of own the fact that you are strong, you're resilient, and you're courageous, and remember that you possess those qualities, and take your life back if you're struggling. And that's kind of what I'm in the process of trying to do.
Take your life back. Very interesting. So we're moving on to your recovery or survival, however you want to classify it. So you're diagnosed twice, treated
Yes,
twice in 2 years, back to
yes,
back.
right.
I remember we went to, I think, a rose garden situation, and we were
Mhm.
sitting there, and I asked something like, "What are your plans for the next 3 or 5 years, or where are you going to be?" I think I said same time next year or in 3 years, and you said something like, "I don't know." You just been diagnosed, and you said you couldn't think that far ahead. So now treatment is over for the second time. What are you thinking now? I'm done. Time to go home, y'all. Nothing to see here. Let's move on with life. I survived. Did it wrap up that neatly for you?
Absolutely not. Not even almost. So, first, I need to say that when I was diagnosed the second time, and when I was going over the treatment options, because now there were options this second time around. Because one of the drugs I got the first year, there's a lifetime limit of how much of that you can have going through your body because it causes heart failure. So, because of that, I had to pivot, and we weren't able to treat me in the way that they traditionally would have if like this is where we started. So because of that, they had mentioned something about stem cells. I don't know, we didn't get that far deep into it. And then there was this plan that was going to be heavy on radiation, and I didn't do that the first time. So when we were about to do that plan, I was told that we had to pivot again because there was a drug that was part of that treatment plan that was there was a nationwide, maybe worldwide, I don't know. There was a shortage. So I had to pivot again and go this other route. Now, while this route was helpful and it did what it was supposed to do, it also was much harder on me than probably what
Mhm.
I would have experienced, and definitely was much harder on me physically than the previous year. Like that wiped me out. It wiped out my immune system, wiped me out physically to the point where like I fainted. I think
Mm,
that's the best way to phrase it. And I didn't go unconscious. I was able to make it to my phone, and I ended up going to the hospital, and they said that basically my whole immune system was down to zero.
mm,
So I had to get multiple times across that year or that time, I had to get platelet transfusions and blood transfusions. And twice I was hospitalized from having a fever while my immune system was that low, which is dangerous. So they
Mm,
had to run two IVs in me, just antibiotics all day and night. The first time it was like 3 or 4 days. The second time I was in there for like a week. So saying all that to say that the whole process was just very traumatizing. So when it was over, I was just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop because
mm,
as I said earlier, the first time thought it was over. I got that 1 week of peace. This time, second time, you're saying it's over. So I'm just like waiting. What do you got to tell me now?
right.
So that was a kickstart to my post recovery anxiety. And basically, in what I still deal with today, like any little thing in my body that feels unnatural, seems unnatural, is bothering me. Oh, my pinky hurts. My forehead is throbbing. Oh, my knee is messing with me. Like any little thing. And it can be a perfectly natural thing that just happens to people where it was caused by, something that actually I did to myself. But my
Mhm,
mind takes it to being something related to this diagnosis. And
mm,
then it starts spiraling.
mhm,
A specific example, last year I had bronchitis, had a really bad cough, and basically I ended up with like bruised ribs from that cough. So even though I knew that that's where it came from, I know that it's possible. At one point I was like, well, what if this pain isn't from me coughing so hard? What if it's this or that, and it just kept spiraling and spiraling and spiraling until I had a panic attack.
mm,
And now at that point, like I know what it is, I know what it feels like. So I was able to you know, do different techniques that I was taught to calm myself down without going to the hospital like I used to.
You went right into one of my final points. You are dealing with the residual. You deal with moderate to sometimes severe anxiety that is directly related to your battle with cancer. That right there is the reason for the series. Like I say this often. It's after the funerals, after the discharges from the hospital, after the clean bill of health is given, after everything seems okay, that we need to remember to check on our folks. When everything goes back to normal, survivors are still dealing with residual. Okay. So you kind of talked about your new normal. Walk us through briefly your new normal with understanding that now you have to do exercises to calm yourself down. You've been traveling, going on a trip, and end up having anxiety, a panic attack, have to go to the hospital. You've been at work and have to leave. Walk us through your new normal and how, yes, you have, as we said, you are a survivor, you've overcome, but you still deal with the residual effects of it.
So I struggle with the negativity, the negative thoughts. Like I said earlier, just I'm just paying too close attention to my body, to like sometimes I overthink swallowing. Like if I'm
Mm,
eating, overthink swallowing. It's like when you think about breathing, you mess it up. You don't do it right. So that happens to me with swallowing. I guess that's a part of anxiety when I looked it up. Because of that, because of all this, I know that I needed some help. I'm able to see that yeah, I've been through a lot and I can't. And I'm also someone that will keep things inside. Like I'll just keep it in my head and it'll happen and I won't even tell anybody that it happened. Like when I'm dealing with the anxiety or like just sometimes minding my own business and and then I just started like replaying different situations in my head that happened, and then I'll start like ugly crying. But I just keep it to myself. I keep it to myself, which is not healthy. It's not healthy. And my primary care doctor told me that I needed to get a therapist. And so I did. And that is really helpful for me because I can get the things, like it's like it needs to like physically get out of my brain. through my mouth, and
Mhm.
that helps me.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm grateful that I am somewhat self aware of, like, it's not like I have these feelings and I don't know where they're coming from. I know exactly where they're coming from,
Mhm.
and I'm actively trying to do things about it. I've been trying to like start a blog on this kind of thing, but I've been struggling trying to find a free website.
Shameless plug. We're gonna be featuring her blogs when it gets started on nogginentertainment.com. I've been trying to get her for so long. It's okay. We're working on it.
Yes. I actually did write the first one, but then that same day I fell and broke a lot of limbs. So as you may recall, I wrote the first one that day.
So I feel a little guilty about this. Quickly. So Jay was attending our younger sister's graduation festivities.
Mhm.
She fell down our front steps and broke her foot, her arm, her wrist. What else? Sprains the other thing. Oh,
Yeah, only my right foot was undamaged. The rest of the limbs were useless.
yeah. So my bad. We're gonna get that blog started. Hit two.
So
So let's
yes, that morning I wrote that.
So whatever she wrote that morning will be featured on Noggin ENT until she gets her own platform started. We're gonna go ahead and kind of launch that. Let's go ahead and spin the wheel.
Okay, real quick, to tie that situation back into this. My doctor said that I probably need to take calcium pills because of the chemo, and that she said that's probably why I was so badly damaged. So
Mm,
I got
that would make
question
sense.
number 11.
Question number 11. Okay. Isn't technology great? I have the questions over here. You're spinning a wheel over there.
Mhm.
You see, this is question number 11. I'm not cheating. All right, let's see. Again, this is so weird. I shuffled these cards, guys. This is another from the online database. What advice would you give to loved ones supporting someone going through cancer treatment?
For that, I would say, like, I know it's hard to know exactly how to be there for people when they're going through, whether it's cancer or anything that they're struggling with. But they say, like, it's not what you say is that someone remembers, it's you being there. So that's what I would say. I just be there.
Mm.
Just that kind of support is what they'll remember more than anything else you do. Just the presence of people is what I remember the most.
Yeah, I remember you said that to me one time. 'Cause sometimes I really struggle with, it's funny, I was gonna name this, series Survivor's Remorse, but that doesn't really go with what we're saying, but if you think about survivor's remorse, like, "Why didn't it happen to me?" or that type of thing, sometimes you go with that guilt, "How can I help?" or whatever, and I remember one time somebody was going through something, I think their parent was about to die or had died and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing something, but I don't know what to do. And you reminded me, like, I don't know what you said to me when this happened. I just know you were there. And it wasn't this situation, but it was a different situation where you're like, I can't even begin to tell you what you said to me. I just know you were there. And so that's just I know that that's like one of your themes is like that people are just there
Yes,
because sometimes you can't even see past that fog of what's going on, but you know that people are there. And I
right,
also remember
exactly.
hearing about a situation where it was a guy who lost his a family member, and his male friend. He said he just came and he just sat with him for hours. They didn't say anything. They just sat there, and he was like, "That helped me get through some dark moments." So while life shaking changes encourage some to throw caution to the wind and live every day for the bucket list, others tend to become more reserved and more afraid. Where are you on that spectrum and where do you want to be? Are you bucket list living or reserved and afraid or somewhere in the middle? And then where do you want to be?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely bucket list living. You know how many times I went to California last year?
Yo, you have been traveling, girl. You've been like up. You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to such and such. Wait, Jill, what? You
Mm.
was just
Just tell me where to be, and I'm seeing what Southwest got.
You own it, right?
Mhm.
So, where do you wanna be? Like, because there's a spectrum for everything. Are you all the way to the end, bucket list living?
I feel like the only thing that's holding me back from doing more things is not always having someone to take those trips or whatever I want to do with me. I mean, I can do stuff by myself, and I have. I also started back going to concerts last year, so I went to 3 concerts last year. One of them by myself. So that's exactly where I want to be. I guess. I mean, we all know that like tomorrow's not promised. We all know that, and right now, like I feel the best that I have, and since everything started, you know, minus the broken bones, but I gotta take advantage of that. So whenever the opportunity comes to do something, count me in.
I'm
YOLO.
with you. I'm with you, girl. Okay, I want to thank you so much for coming on and stepping up to the hot mic as our premier guest on Survivor's Residuum. Because we encourage edutainment at Noggin ENT, we leave all of our guests with homework to do. So, JY, you've been through some intense weathering, and maybe you weren't really sure what you were made of before. So, I want you to find out what texture your residuum is now and what you want it to be, and paint a masterpiece of what that looks like 1 year from now. So I know that you are very creative. I will send you the definition of residuum and the weathering. And I just want you to get a picture in your mind and then find out what you think the texture of your residuum is now and what you want it to be. And whatever that means, paint a masterpiece of what that looks like, whether it's weathering over time, what it looks like over time, building up, firm clay, whatever. That's your homework. For the next 10 minutes, we're just going to do rapid fire. So I'm going to tell you to keep clicking that wheel. And I think we'll stop at 5 questions if we have the time.
Okay. Question two.
Question number two. Okay, question two. And this question is from Paulina B. I'm glad this came back around. I love this. We all know that Black people have a long history of being abused and neglected in the healthcare system. How was your experience finding care after your diagnosis?
I feel like I actually had really good doctors and nurses. I never felt worried about that when, as far as like dealing with people. Like I knew that in the back of my mind and I was conscious of it, but for the most part, I will say, like there was like 2 incidents I can recall, like you're not good at your job. But for the most part, like I really appreciated the level of, I don't know, kindness, I guess. Like I had a nurse pray with me one time when I was hospitalized, and like a lot of the chemo nurses, they were in there having to feed you that stuff, and so a lot of them like were really kind and down to earth. And I've had people like when I went to like a primary care appointment and they're looking at my history and they're like, "Oh, you had Dr. Robertson as your oncologist? He's one of the greatest doctors." Like I had mostly people telling me that that wasn't, even in his practice,
Hmm.
So I felt really good about the grateful for the care that I received.
Good. All right. Next one.
Number 8.
Number eight. Number eight. Number eight. All right. We got number eight here. And this is from Stanford Medicine. What has been the most significant change you see in yourself now that you have lived with cancer?
The most significant change is the anxiety, for sure, because, man, to some degree, I did worry a little bit about things, but not to the extreme that I experience now. So just mental health struggles and worrying about living that life on repeat, because it was repeated. So it's not like, that fear is just based on it because it happened.
Right, right.
So I think that was one of the biggest changes. And then I kind of lost a few things about myself, I guess, like different things that I would do as far as like self care, whatever the case may be. I felt like I forgot kind of who I was before everything because I spent a couple years being that person, and
Mm-hmm.
so that was like enough to kind of make me completely forget who I was in a way. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm still trying to figure out like who I am now.
Interesting. Okay, rapid fire question. Next question.
Let's see, 14.
14. Question number 14. As you can see, that's 14. And this is a question from me. Do you feel you were given the proper opportunity to ask your physician questions about the after effects on childbearing and other reproductive health issues?
No, I don't feel like I fully understood those effects, especially the first time because I think you were there
Yes.
and for that, and they started talking about that, the whole freezing the eggs and all that kind of stuff.
But this is like minutes before your chemo. Like, this is
Right.
like you don't have time to even.
No, that was the first time that I learned that that the chemo stops your period.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I feel like I in that aspect I was not told everything I needed to know about that. And now I'm at a point where because of the back to back treatments that I'm still in that menopausal state, and basically they don't know if this is permanent or not.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is also a message to people, take heed, ask the questions that you need to ask.
Mhm.
And
You
if,
got to advocate for yourself.
100%, if you feel like you're not able to do that, take a break and ask a family member, hey, get some questions, ask some questions because you never know what the effects may be. Okay. One more question. We have time for two more questions.
Number 1.
Number one, numero uno. All right, number one. And this question is from Carlina W. If you had one more year to live or less, how would you spend your time left on Earth?
I don't like thinking about stuff like that. But I'm gonna answer. I'm not gonna sip the tea. I want to say that I will be wilding out, but I know I wouldn't. That's not me anymore. But I definitely would just experience all the things that I can experience. So much, so much to this world beyond our little daily routines. So
Mm-hmm.
much out there to do and see, and I would want to do and see as much of that as I could.
Yeah, that's good. Good way to answer that question. All right, one more.
Number 16.
Number 16. Final question. Final question. And I want to thank everybody who submitted questions. I appreciate you all for submitting questions and helping to make this process what it is. Oh, well, I'm going to put this back. Let's shuffle again because this is a question from me. And I've already asked a question from me. So I want to see if we can give a fair chance to someone else. Let's shuffle again.
12.
Well, number 12. Number 12. And this is unknown. Actually, we talked about this. Did you make any lifestyle changes after your treatment to manage your health? Maybe we didn't talk about that at length. Did you make any lifestyle changes after your treatment to manage your health?
I have attempted to change a lot of things, and I sometimes lack the motivation to stick to things. And I actually learned in my last therapy session that things like motivation is affected by like the trauma.
Mm,
So I know I'm now in that process of where what of trying to like be really careful about like chemicals and stuff. I did start usually using only like the aluminum free deodorant. Like I don't use regular deodorant anymore, and um, I do try to exercise a couple times a week, and I've started juicing. So just trying to stay away from processed foods and cook more, that kind of stuff.
Well, I want to thank you again, JY. I appreciate you for being brave, stepping up to the hot mic, being the first person to come on Survivor's Residuum. I appreciate you for being open and candid. And I hope that you continue to live the way you want to live and that you continue to hold on to his peace as you continue on because there will definitely be some more residual coming and just learning how to tackle that. Signing out for now. Thank you for tuning in to Survivor's Residuum. We will meet here on our YouTube page every third Sunday at 3 p.m. for a new interview of his or her story. And remember, don't forget to remember to use your noggin. Bye.